How many times have you told yourself, I'll start when I'm ready, when I have a little more experience, when I feel more confident, or when the timing is right? I used to think the same way. I've always been someone who values preparation, strategy, and makes sure everything is in place before taking action. But I noticed something important. Even with the best planning, there was a limit to how much I could prepare. At some point, taking action was the only way to make real progress. And that approach worked for me because I took action, adapted, and kept pushing forward. If you're new to my channel, I'm Son. I spent more than 20 years working across finance, creative, and luxury industries, taking on different roles and positions. Over time, I've grown, learned, and discovered what truly leads to success. I work with people who were just as capable and ambitious, but they kept holding themselves back, waiting to feel more ready. They spent so much time perfecting their plans that they never actually got started. And that only confirmed what I had seen over and over again. The real difference wasn't experience or confidence, but the willingness to take the first step, even without having it all figured out. And with all of that, one thing became clear. Big wins don't happen overnight. They build from small strategic actions that compound over time. You know that feeling when you've been working on something, trying to get every detail right, making sure everything is perfect before putting it out there? You tweak, refine, adjust until eventually you start to wonder if it's ever going to be good enough to share. I've been there, and I've seen so many people go through the same thing, getting caught up in perfecting something so much that they never actually start. At some point, I realized something important. There's a difference between preparing and delaying. And that's where most people get stuck. They think they are making progress, but in reality, they are just polishing an idea that never sees the light of day. I've worked in industries where high standards are everything, where precision, attention to detail, and excellence aren't optional, they're expected. And trust me, I understand the urge to get things just right before putting them out into the world. At some point, you have to let go of perfectionism and trust that you'll figure things out along the way. The biggest progress I've ever made, whether in work or personal goals, never came from waiting until I felt 100% ready. It came from taking the first step, adjusting along the way, and improving through action. Think about it. If perfection is your ultimate standard, how do you allow yourself to grow? Where's the space to experiment, to make mistakes, to improve? That kind of pressure makes everything harder. It turns progress into a test you feel you have to pass on the first try, and that's not the best way to take on new challenges. And for many, it's not just perfectionism, it's fear. The fear of making mistakes, the fear of not getting it right from the beginning, and maybe the biggest one, the fear of being judged. That fear creates doubt, and doubt, that's what keeps you stuck. What matters is focusing on your progress, not your fears. No one starts as an expert. Everyone starts small. So the key is to start before you feel ready. Not blindly, not without a plan, but without waiting for a perfect moment that will never come. Because progress doesn't wait for perfection. And the first real win is not about getting it perfect, it's about getting started. Once you let go of perfectionism and decide to start, the next challenge isn't about making a huge leap. It's about continuing to move forward step by step. A lot of people think that once they take the first step, everything will fall into place. But the truth is, progress doesn't happen in one big jump. It happens through small, consistent actions. I've seen so many people start strong, full of motivation, only to lose momentum because they are waiting for another perfect moment to take the next step. But that's not how real progress works. The key isn't about moving fast, it's about not stopping. I've learned that the best way to keep moving forward is to make the next step easy. Instead of overwhelming yourself with big goals, focus on one small action at a time. And I know this firsthand. I used to feel completely overwhelmed by the idea of networking events and talking to new people. Just the thought of not knowing how to start a conversation or break the ice made me so uncomfortable that I avoided them entirely. I think you might relate. Approaching people, knowing what to say, and carrying a conversation requires confidence and communication skills, and that doesn't come naturally to everyone. It definitely didn't for me. That was something I had to learn. So one day I challenged myself to take just one small action. Instead of trying to master networking overnight, I set a simple rule for myself. At every event, I would start just one conversation by asking a simple question to the person next to me. Nothing complicated, just something like, how did you hear about this event? Or, what's something exciting you are working on? It wasn't much, but it was a start. At first, I worried I sound awkward or that people wouldn't talk to me. Who was I to start a conversation? But I quickly realized that most people are happy to talk about themselves. They just need a little bit of encouragement. And trust me, they genuinely appreciate it when you take the initiative. Over time, what used to feel nerve-wracking became second nature. I wasn't just starting conversations, I was building real connections without feeling awkward or out of place. Breaking the ice became easier, and the anxiety that once held me back faded away. And that's the beauty of this approach. Small actions create momentum. They make progress feel natural instead of overwhelming. So if you've ever felt stuck after getting started, shift your focus. Stop worrying about how far you have to go. Just focus on the next step. And the second big win, it's not about how much you do at once. It's about staying in motion, one small step at a time. Now it's time to build real progress. It's about staying consistent and improving bit by bit every day after you take the first step. Many people start strong, but then they expect big results too quickly. When they don't see immediate change, they lose motivation. But progress isn't something you force, it's something you build step by step. That's why one of the most powerful lessons I've learned is the Japanese philosophy of Kaizen, the idea of continuous improvement through small manageable steps. Instead of chasing big changes all at once, Kaizen has taught me to focus on getting just 1% better every day. These small improvements can be as simple as refining a habit, adjusting your approach, or learning something new. The key is to make progress so small that it's almost impossible to fail. Over time, these tiny changes build on each other, making meaningful, lasting improvements feel more natural and achievable. I started applying this in my own life by making small but intentional improvements. At first, my approach to productivity felt scattered. I had big plans, but I wasn't always making the best use of my time. So I started making small, gradual adjustments. For example, instead of waking up and figuring out my tasks on the spot, I began planning them the night before. Over time, I refined my system, learning what worked best, prioritizing better, and adjusting my approach based on what actually moved me forward. I also realized that having a long to-do list wasn't making me more productive, it was just making me feel overwhelmed. So I shifted my focus to just 3 key priorities each day. The more I practiced this, the better I became at identifying what truly mattered and eliminating distractions that weren't adding value. To improve my focus, I dedicated specific time blocks for deep work. At first, it wasn't easy. My mind wanted to jump from task to task. But by tracking my progress and making small improvements to my environment, I gradually strengthened my ability to concentrate for longer stretches without losing focus. At first, these changes seemed minor, but as I kept refining them, they started making a huge difference in my productivity, focus, and overall sense of progress. So if you ever feel like things aren't moving fast enough, shift your focus. Stop worrying about instant results and start focusing on getting just a little better each day. And that is your third big win. It's not about making big moves, it's about steady, continuous improvement that leads to something bigger over time. By now, you've started taking small, consistent steps and focusing on steady improvement. But here's something that can make all the difference, making sure you are putting your energy into the right things. Because, let's be real, not all effort is equal. I used to think that being productive meant doing as much as possible, checking off tasks, answering every email, constantly staying busy. But over time, I realized something important. Being busy doesn't mean being effective. And that's where the 80-20 rule, also known as the Pareto principle, changed everything for me. This principle states that 80% of results come from just 20% of your efforts. In other words, not everything you do has the same impact. Some tasks move the needle forward, while others just keep you feeling busy without creating real progress. And figuring out what that 20% is and focusing on it, that's the key. Instead of constantly checking and replying to emails throughout the day, I set specific times to check them, once in the morning and once in the afternoon. That way, I could focus on deeper, more meaningful work without constant interruptions. And guess what? Nothing fell apart. In fact, I became more productive because I wasn't constantly switching tasks. I also applied this principle to client relationships. At one point, I realized that a small percentage of my clients were generating the majority of my business. Instead of stretching myself too thin, I prioritized the clients where I could create the biggest impact. By focusing on those relationships, I was able to provide more tailored service, deliver better results, and ultimately grow the business in a sustainable way while still ensuring that every client received the attention and support they needed. And it didn't stop there. I applied the same principle to learning new skills. Rather than trying to master everything at once, I focused on the smallest, most impactful skills that would actually move me forward. That meant instead of spending hours on generic productivity techniques, I worked on improving just 1 or 2 habits that made the biggest difference, like prioritizing deep work over multitasking. At first, these shifts seemed small, but as I practiced them, I saw how focusing on the right things rather than everything led to massive results. And that's what the fourth big win is about. It's not about working harder, it's about working smarter. One of the biggest reasons people lose motivation is because they don't feel like they are making progress. You put in the effort, stay consistent, and yet some days it feels like nothing is changing. You're working hard, but the big results still seem far away, and that is where most people start to doubt themselves. But here's the truth, big wins don't always look big in the moment. That's why one of the most important lessons I've learned is this. If you only measure success by massive achievements, you'll always feel like you're falling short. I used to believe that success was about reaching huge milestones, launching a major project, hitting a big revenue goal, or achieving something that felt undeniable. But over time, I realized that true progress is often quiet, gradual, and built from small wins that add up over time. So I started shifting my perspective. Instead of chasing one big breakthrough, I started celebrating the small, meaningful wins that kept me moving forward. Like when I finally built a system that helped me stay productive without feeling overwhelmed, that was a real win because it allowed me to stay consistent without burning out. Or when I got feedback from a client that showed me I was making real impact, that was a win because it proved that my efforts were creating tangible results. Even something as simple as showing up and putting in the effort, even on days when I didn't feel motivated, that was a win because consistency is what leads to real progress over time. And that's the final big win. When you start recognizing small wins as real progress, you stay motivated long enough to achieve the big results. Success isn't about waiting until you've made it. It's about seeing the value in every single step that gets you there. These are the 5 big wins you can achieve. Wins that truly make a difference in your progress, your mindset, and your results. Not by waiting for some massive breakthroughs, but by taking small strategic steps that create real change over time. And if you're a high achiever, you might wonder what happens when progress feels slow. When you are doing everything right, but it seems like nothing is changing. Well, that's when building resilience becomes essential. In my next video, I explore how to strengthen your ability to stay committed even when things feel tough and results aren't immediate. And if you like this video, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. It helps the channel grow and keeps you in the loop for what's coming next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.